One law enforcement officer wrote on this forum about his current life situation of having to watch all of these evidence videos that are being taken in. They wrote, no, you never get desensitized to it. You get burned out by it. I mean, some of the stuff I've seen, I can't get it out of my head. Stupid things like pet names that your partner might call you, like, oh baby, sweetie, or even big boy, will bring back thoughts of you had to witness in these videos, and it's not a great experience. I have seen things in my life that I should never have seen. I mean, things that'll make your skin crawl, which is very scary to think about it. For those law enforcement officers, every piece of evidence that they receive, they can't just shove it away in a box or put it in a hard drive and go, okay, yeah, we've got the evidence. We're good now. They have to log every piece of that footage. They have to, in most cases, categorize the footage based on the seriousness, the violence, and even the age of the victims in the videos. There are some computer software programs to help with the logging of images, but with videos, most of the time, a reviewing officer will need to sit there and provide a written account in graphic detail of what the video contains during the timestamps during each video. A lot of law enforcement officials state bluntly, they would rather deal with dead, decomposing bodies that smell incredibly horrendous than sit in front of a computer and watch these types of videos. There are dedicated task forces for these jobs. They have to receive regular counseling, heavy psychiatric evaluations. Even before they're tasked with logging such evidence, they typically go through these extensive training periods to develop the coping mechanisms, literally just to get their mind ready to watch these videos, to deal with the potential psychological trauma of what happens when they see something like this. The turnaround rate for someone in the task force like this usually is maxed out 1 or 2 years, maybe 3. Some don't even make it past a month. Sometimes they'll leave and they'll be asked to come back because they were really good at identifying markers.
Identifying markers?
So in the video, you're not just looking at the crime. That's one element. You have to log exactly what happens in detailed format so it can be presented in court. But you're also looking for sweaters, music in the background, some sort of symbol that could indicate what state it was filmed in, what country it was filmed in, what time period it was filmed in. Was it summer? Was it winter? Was it this year? Was it last year? Some people are a little bit more skilled than others and they'll be asked to come back. Some people don't even make it a month. It's that bad. The Hollywood, Florida police are in a very tricky situation. They're dealing with both a dead, decomposing body, and they have about 20 hours of footage that they need to go through. They need to watch 20 hours of footage to understand the full picture of what has even taken place here. It was such a bizarre call. They rushed out to this small apartment complex. They found a man dead in his apartment, completely nude. His face was painted this very grotesque green-red color, almost striped. Striped green and red fully. He looked like he was wearing a mask. He didn't even look human. The entire apartment is a mess, like a hoarding situation. The only thing that stood out immediately to them, well, it's pretty unavoidable. Someone wanted them to find it. On the wall above the dead body, written in giant painted letters, it's taken up the whole wall, the entirety of the wall. It reads, "The 8mm tapes are a documentation of a crime, a terrorist matter. They are for the FBI." And it had an arrow pointing to a stack of tapes.
Is that the 20 hours?
Yes. So if anything is going to help them figure out exactly what happened to this dead person, it's going to be the tapes. It's not something that they can let linger or wait for a designated task force. One of the tapes is even titled "The Last Day." They insert the tape and press play. The man's death is entirely caught on camera from start to finish, from him heavy breathing before his violent end. And even afterwards, he lets out this kind of gasp of air, but it sounds like someone gurgling mouthwash, and they just watch him die right there on the screen. Okay, we'll start rewinding the tape. They start rewinding the tape to right before he dies. And right before he dies, he had ripped the pages out of a book to make this little empty space, like a hidden compartment inside of a book. And inside of it, he had placed a bomb. He video logs that he plans on sending this book bomb, to one of the most well-known female celebrities in the entire world, straight to her home address. The officers stare at each other. Stop the tape right now. They pause it, Did we not just see a book that looks just like that still inside of his apartment? Get everybody out now. Get them out now and call the bomb squad. We would like to thank today's sponsors who have made it possible for Rotten Mango to support the National Network to End Domestic Violence, a nonprofit organization dedicated to creating a social, political, and economic environment in which partner-related workplace and stalking violence no longer exist. They provide legal resources and support for things like restraining orders and much more. This episode's partnerships have also made it possible to support Rotten Mango's growing team, and we would like to thank you guys for your continued support as we work on our mission to be worthy advocates. As always, full show notes are available at rottenmangopodcast.com. Now, before we get started, a few quick disclaimers. There are a lot of heavy topics in today's episode, references to hate speech, racism, violent stalking, and self-exit. Additionally, the perpetrator in this case states that he has a genetic disorder as well as struggles with his mental health. Obviously, it shouldn't need to be said, but just in case, these are unrelated diagnoses, and anyone with similar disorders or mental health struggles is not inherently violent, nor does this particular case represent communities as a whole. So with that being said, let's get into it. First of the 20 tapes, which we will refer to as the video diaries. 20 separate tapes, 20 hours long video diaries. It starts on Ricardo Lopez's 21st birthday. His present to himself is this: the camera to document his life, his art, and most importantly, his big plans. He looks at the camera. Do you want to see something funny? I'm going to show you who I am. And he pinches his cheeks. So his thumbs are at the edges of his mouth, and he pinches his upper cheeks to make like a very scary smiley face. And he gets closer to the camera and closer. I am a monster. Can you see me smiling at you? Comfort is what I seek in speaking to you. Something with I don't know, something that makes me feel better. For a long time, I've been speaking into a mirror and being my own psychologist or whatever.
I am a monster. Can you see me smiling at you? Oh.
He said that he plans on documenting his plans to send his favorite celebrity an HIV bomb because she deserves to die. So he's gonna find a sex worker that has AIDS, pay for her blood. Obviously, he's not gonna sleep with her. He states that. Then inject the blood into hypodermic needles, send her a package looking like it's from a PR firm from New York City that's inviting her to an AIDS gala. That's perfect. In research for funding for AIDS, she's gonna open up the invitation and boom, straight into her thumbs, 2 needles will inject her with HIV AIDS blood. He states, I really like this AIDS thing. It's sort of poetic. Technically, if you really want to get into it, it's much easier than having to go fly over there and stalk her or shoot her or stab her. He said he would make the package seem like a formal invitation. He pretends to have his thumbs poked at one point and he starts screaming bloody murder because that's his master plan. This way, she can't not think about him. He will be the biggest part of her life. He will be the one person in her life that she'll never stop thinking about. She'll never forget him.
Oh my God! Those 2 hypodermic needles are going to poke her thumbs, thus introducing into her bloodstream HIV contaminated blood.
So for the next 20 hours, that's over the span of 9 months, so he's not vlogging like 20 hours straight, he will start documenting his own mental collapse until he finally successfully mails a bomb to London. 9 months later, Ricardo Lopez would be dead. 20 hours of footage would be taped that shows his mind completely breaking apart, and he just gets further and further from reality. And a bomb will be sitting in a South London post office, getting ready to be delivered to a famous celebrity's residence. Just sitting there, rattling, bubbling, waiting to be opened. If you were to open the cardboard box, you would see a book in there, a book. And once you open that, everything would go to John, the maintenance man at the apartment building in Florida. He has had multiple calls about the same thing, which feels abnormal. It's September 16th, but it's still a little hot in Florida. But there's no reason for anything to be stinking up the entire place. Sometimes during the summer, you get trash left out. You mix it with the heat, the humidity of Florida. Yeah, it starts having a pungent smell that feels like it's piercing through your brain. But right now, it's fall, it's September. He makes his way over to the apartment building. And yeah, okay, it does kind of smell rancid. He had a few tasks that he wanted to do prior to all of this, but the smell is so intoxicatingly horrendous, he feels like he's going to pass out. He starts investigating, which is basically just him walking around, pausing, aggressively sniffing, and then walking around, pausing, and aggressively sniffing. And he's trying to figure out if the smell gets stronger or weaker in certain areas. Right here is the most pungent scent. He looks up and he sees the door leading directly into apartment A. He scrambles to get the keys out. He knocks on the door. Maintenance. So the maintenance staff, they're allowed to come in without prior approval in this building to fix emergency issues, which in this case, it seems like it's an emergency issue. Everybody's been complaining about this. He opens the door and nobody's home, or at least nobody's responding. The smell just keeps getting stronger as he walks in. The entire apartment is trashed. It's disgusting. It's filthy, but not gross enough to cause a scent like this. He steps over random pizza boxes on the ground. He sees this this is a tiny, tiny cramped little apartment. And what takes up most of the space is this sculpture of a woman's face made out of clay. It's probably the size of my upper torso.
It's like a paper mache type of face, or?
Clay, I would say.
Clay.
Yes, and it looks professionally done. Like whoever is doing this, it doesn't look like something I would do. It looks well. It looks good. It resembles a person.
You can tell this is someone.
Yes. And if you're familiar with specific people, you might even be able to tell who this is. It's that specific in detail. It's just very strange. The maintenance man looks down, and there in the middle of the apartment, laying on the ground, dead, is a man's fully nude body. He looks not human. He looks like a monster. His body had already started decomposing in the Florida heat, so his body is different blotches of different colors. His face is painted red and green. His head is completely shaved. His eyebrows are shaved. It looks like he put on a Halloween mask, but only on the front of his face, but it's clearly not a mask. And he's dead. Did he paint his own face before passing, or did somebody else paint his face? But why? There's a giant pool of blood underneath him. John turns on his heels. He walks right out of that apartment. He immediately calls the police. Authorities rush in. They survey the scene, and it's confusing because was this man kidnapped? Is this a terrorist organization? Because remember on the wall, it said it's a terrorist crime, a terrorist matter. This is for the FBI. On the fridge, the words N-word lover are painted, and there's one last weird note left behind. On a canvas, like an art canvas that you would get at the store, situated directly behind the dead body, are the words, the best of me. The best of me. The authorities are so confused until one of them points out, the man died from a gunshot wound to the head. It appears that the way he slumped over, he would have been sitting right in front with his head in front, directly in front of that canvas. Meaning, it seems like the intention being, given the placement, that his brain matter was supposed to splatter onto the canvas, and that would be the best of him. At the same time, other officers continue watching the tapes. I mean, they're already putting the tapes in and watching them because time is of the essence. They see the dead man, Ricardo, before his passing, taking the bomb and going to the post office and shipping it successfully. He ships it all the way to England, London, where the singer has a home.
I better hurry up and go now. I'm gonna go now. I'm gonna go now.
They rushed to call Scotland Yard, which is the FBI of England. The package had already arrived in a small post office in South London, and it was about to be dispatched and delivered to the singer's address. But they caught it. Do you know the best way to defuse a bomb, if you can?
Throw it into the water.
It's to make it explode.
Oh.
It's a controlled explosion. Either the bomb squad will evacuate the area and detonate the bomb, or if possible, the best case scenario would be to get the bomb, place it in a vessel or a robot that can handle the size of explosion that they're expecting from this size bomb, have it safely transported to a remote location, have it detonated in a controlled environment. Usually the bomb is placed under a reinforced chamber or it's buried deep into the ground. Sometimes the bomb squad will add additional explosives inside to make sure that the device is completely destroyed and no longer active after detonating. That is what the Scotland Yard do to this bomb, the one that was addressed to the globally known famous singer. But now that the bomb is detonated, the singer is safe and secure. She never got the bomb. There's a few lingering questions. Why did this man from Florida send an Icelandic musician living in London a bomb? Like, it's so random. There's no connection. They don't know each other other than maybe he listens to her music. And why is he dead now? I mean, what was his plan? But it's crazy that it went through customs. That is kind of crazy.
But is it because it's a very different bomb? Like it has, he's made it like needles and all that?
Yeah, it's not necessarily an explosive type of bomb. Yeah. Now, the dead man's name is Ricardo Lopez, but a lot of people that know him, they just call him the Bug Man. He's an exterminator. That is his occupation. And he works for his older brother, George, who owns this pest control company in Florida, which, you know, Ricardo is not very happy about. If you told Ricardo, when you drop out of high school at 16 years old to pursue art, you're going to end up being the Bug Man, he probably would not have believed you. Because that's crazy.
What type of art?
He did a lot of drawings, pastels, watercolors. I mean, he does seem to be skilled at art. He seems to have a talent, yeah.
Oh, the statue was made by him?
The sculpture is made by him. Now he's 21 and just exterminating cockroaches and flies on a daily basis. He would have these little outbursts on the job, and this is why his brother would constantly keep an eye on him. It's always been a thing in the family that Ricardo isn't the most mentally stable. You know, he's a little unhinged, but they try to be understanding. He would have these outbursts. I'm an exterminator, a bug man, as many people would choose to refer to me, you know, cockroach man. But most people in this world, I'd say the majority are cockroaches, me being one of them. If you look around you. I'm a piece of shit, eh? That's why I'm not interested in finding a girlfriend. I'm a dirty, sloppy, fat, disgusting piece of shit, okay? But he still took pride in his work. He would say, I really enjoy destroying these cockroaches. It's a pleasure for me. That and the fact that he had access to a lot of harsh chemicals because of his job. He would say things like, I have access to many potentially catastrophic chemicals, and that's my advantage because anybody can have guns. Chemicals? People need access and knowledge, and I do. Which, to be fair, maybe he's just dealing with the trauma of having his dreams go down the drain, and this is his way of boosting his ego. I mean, I think it's terrifying, but I think a lot of his friends tried to be understanding about it. That's what his brother George and his friend Ralph thought. Other than these little outbursts at work, though, about how everybody is just cockroaches, other than that, Ricardo was typically okay most of the time. When he wasn't ranting about people calling him the Roach Man, he would have small, odd moments, but they were really small. So one time he was sitting with his friend, Ralph, at dinner, and the two of them are so close that silences throughout the dinner, no big deal. They're sitting in silence, enjoying each other's company, until Ricardo suddenly breaks the silence. What if you saw your ex-girlfriend working at a strip club? What? Just imagine her stripping down in front of everyone. The two start debating what they would do in that situation. And I guess the primary reaction would be shock, right? There's another moment of silence before Ricardo comments. Just because you kill somebody doesn't mean that you don't love them anymore.
This is what the friend shared?
He shared it in his video diaries.
Oh.
I told him, you know, just because you kill somebody doesn't mean you don't love them. And he goes, yeah, you're right. Yeah, just because you kill somebody doesn't mean you don't love them. So I didn't expect that, but that's interesting.
So yeah, I mean, Ricardo has these little quirks here and there. I mean, like a few years ago, there was another incident. Ricardo's family had walked into his room, and it was pretty terrifying. I mean, but also potentially amusing if they thought this was some sort of like YouTube prank. Starting from the top where the ceiling begins, all the way down to the floor, every single inch of every single wall is covered in the same face, a picture of the same face. Ricardo had taken a picture of one person and taped it all over his walls.
Like those YouTube pranks.
Exactly. But it wasn't a prank. I mean, what the hell? Like, what's going on? Is this the celebrity that he won't stop talking about nonstop? The one that he purchased all those magazines about? Is that the one? The CDs? Like, why is he obsessed with her? Ricardo would come home and try to convince them it's for an art project. It's supposed to be like creative expression. But the family would never forget because it was just so strange. Ricardo would later say this was his attempt to get rid of his obsession. I mean, think about it. If you're obsessed with somebody, if you're obsessed over a famous celebrity, how are you going to move on? How are you going to continue in reality? If you think that you have a chance at dating them and your whole life is being held back, how do you move on? He has to break the fantasy. He said, F it. I was going to desensitize myself. I had hundreds of photographs of her face all over my walls and everything. That way I would get sick and tired of looking at her face, and it would lose that magicalness. That was a big step for me. But clearly, it didn't work. That's not what happened, because the police are now sorting through 20 hours of footage left behind. They're learning about his plan to send his obsession an HIV-infused bomb, and they just need answers because this case is going to blow up internationally. They need to figure out what to tell the public. Did he send other bombs? Is this a case of a deranged stalker? Did he stalk any other celebrities too? Are there other crimes that he might have committed? And why Björk? Why this celebrity? The tapes are only from Ricardo's perspective of things, and how much can they trust? From records, they can see that Ricardo Lopez was born in Uruguay before immigrating to the US as a kid. He first moved to Georgia, that's where he was raised, then to Hollywood, Florida.
Georgia?
Yeah.
He was here.
Yeah. But that doesn't tell them too much. I mean, the authorities, they reach out to people who would have known Ricardo when he was a kid, and they want to know because sometimes those with obsessive personalities, to the point that they become violent towards their obsessions, there might be signs when they're young. There might be little clues. Everyone who knew Ricardo was very confused on how to answer the question. I mean, he was close with his family. There was nothing to indicate that something was wrong. I mean, unless you consider being very shy a crime. He's just one of those kids that didn't make a lot of friends. He liked to keep his circle small. He was an introvert, very big introvert, actually. I mean, even now, he probably only had like one guy friend, two guy friends.
When was this happening?
96.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Ralph being one of his best friends. But you know what? Now that they're all thinking about it, he did have this thing where he was terrified of talking to girls. Like, terrified. But everybody just thought, I mean, he's super shy. He was extremely intelligent, though, so he just maybe not interested in dating? He did have this fantasy, though, that he would become this world-renowned artist, and that would occupy his mind since childhood. But he didn't become one, right? Well, he never applied to any schools. He was too terrified of rejection, so he just wouldn't apply. He did have this small thing, though, where he would sometimes get fixated on certain movies or certain actresses. Like one time he was watching Thelma and Louise, and he knew every line to that movie. Same with Beetlejuice. His favorite was this actress named Gina Davis. It's almost like he watched anything that she was in. I mean, anything for her, he would watch it, he would buy it. He knew everything about her. He could recite any line that she had in any show or movie. Even if she was just like making a cameo and had one line in a show, he would know that line and he would know the timestamp of when she comes on. Which sounds a little bit alarming, but one day he went to go buy a magazine with her on the cover, and he realized that Gina Davis is now in a public relationship with fellow actor Jeff Goldblum. He was devastated. You would almost think that Gina Davis was cheating on him, that they were in a relationship or something, which is alarming, but he got over it, which is probably why his friends and family didn't think anything crazy about it. It's not that alarming. I mean, eventually he gets over it, so what's the matter, right? So why didn't he get over Björk? Why go so extreme? If you guys don't know, Björk is an Icelandic musician, and she is honestly, I don't know how to describe her music. I went onto Reddit. People describe her music style as unconventional, avant-garde, very diverse and eclectic, one of a kind, full of emotion. I mean, just very experimental. One person writes, it's a very emotional experience from a sonic form. Initially, causes much confusion and incredulous looks at first, and then it just creeps up on you until you are utterly and hopelessly in love with her music. I've never listened to her music prior to the research of this case. I might start after. I mean, not that she like needs my streams or anything. She's massive. She is one of the biggest names in music, to the point where a lot of other experimental artists, they all get compared to her. So for example, Grimes, she doesn't like being compared to Björk. She loves Björk, but she just gets annoyed that all experimental musicians get compared to Björk, especially if they're a girl or if they identify as like a woman, right? But that's how big she is. If you're in the experimental music world, everybody's getting compared to Björk. And that's like the highest compliment you could probably get. She was one of the biggest names in the industry. She's actually a very fascinating character. Her first album, which was an album full of covers of other artists' music, was released when she was 11. She just did it for fun. It wasn't a serious debut, but she still ended up selling 7,000 copies, which is kind of wild. And she has this very fascinating background, which probably contributes to the way that she makes her music. Her dad is this super conservative leader of the union type of figure, like the labor union. Her mom is an activist that everybody said kind of lived more of a commune lifestyle. They called her a hippie. Her parents are divorced, by the way, so she grows up between going to her dad's house, which is super rigid, very rule-oriented home, to her mom's free-spirited, everybody gets to do what they want. There's 8 adults living in that one house. Even the kids, the type of environment, just back and forth, back and forth. It's a very complicated background. Björk said that she loved and hated the experience of being so free on her mom's side. She said, can you imagine being brought up by 7 grown-ups who all hate work and all they want to do is play games all day and tell you 4-hour-long stories and make kites?
She said she loved and hated.
Yes, like she loved it and grew to resentment because when you're a child, you want order and authority at points. She said the house was painted purple, so... yeah. Later in Björk's musical career, she becomes very experimental. Apparently one time she wanted the acoustics of a song to sound a very specific way. So she went ahead and starts recording in a bat-infested cave in the Bahamas. She like went to a cave and starts recording in there. She wants to be in very particular environments that embodies the type of music that she's trying to make. She once said in an interview, a lot of what I was doing before was to please other people. It had been my biggest fear since I was 11 to be in the spotlight. In the band that I was in Iceland, I even tried to look as ugly as possible so that people would listen to the music, but not look at me. Being a woman gets in the way. If people see me as a object, it is their problem. And yet, there was this very, very big problem. A fan from Florida had become so obsessed with Björk, with her music, that he planned on grooming her. This is so complicated. Let me explain. Ricardo Lopez is 21 years old when he starts taping his video diaries. Björk is 31 years old. So how would he groom her? I mean, that term specifically refers to the manipulation of someone far younger than you, typically underage. But Ricardo has a plan. His plan is to time travel. The ultimate fantasy. What? In his video diaries, he describes his plans way better than I can because they're so unhinged. But he states he wants to go back in time and meet Björk when she's a little child. Why?
To be the single most important influence on her life.
What does that mean? Help her develop that attachment for me. I go back and I become the single most important person in Iceland for the fact that, imagine a traveler from the future that comes with news from the future, and I came to Iceland exclusively to see her, you know? Besides, going to the past is simple compared to going to the future. The future is, well, cryonics, the art of freezing people, right? That sounds crazy, but there's a corporation in California that freezes the rich and famous. They'll freeze your whole body, pump out all the water in your body, and then they inject like a gelatin into you, put a different cocktail of drugs into you to help your cells avoid freezing. It goes into detail and I can talk about it later if I want. But the thing is, they freeze your body for the future. They just don't have the technology today to resuscitate you. But they will soon. So this is the plan. You get frozen, and then 150 years later, 250 years in the future, you wake up and they have a time machine type thing that's already built. Well, that's the fantasy, right? The plan was to freeze himself, wake up in a time machine, right? Then go back to the past to be the single most biggest influence on Björk's life. He says, me being there in her reproductive years or young, flowering years, looking up to me, you can change people at an early age, but not when they're much older. The earlier, the younger you are, the more vulnerable, okay? Especially a young girl. Their minds are very vulnerable. Ready for information? That's how minds work.
That's how minds work, and the younger you are, the more susceptible it is to a person with a plan, sort of like to, not to abuse it, but to mold it,
I want to get her to be interested in me, man, who the hell is this guy? If I go back in time, change her life completely, and she decides to stay in Iceland and she pursues, her career, of course, but in a different, completely different fashion, this and that, and maybe she's not famous, okay? Either way, the plan is go back in time with the knowledge that I have now and just bring her the utmost pleasure, She's never had any experience if I meet her when she's that young. And imagine what that could be for your first experience, for hours. He talks about performing oral. Yeah.
First of all, is he being serious or is he like just like talking out of thin air right now?
It seems like this was his ultimate fantasy, but he realizes it's not going to work. He doesn't have the money to get frozen. He doesn't know if this is a surefire plan, so he's just going to kill her instead. But this is his ultimate fantasy, if he could make anything work.
Wow. Okay, so his ultimate plan is go to this company, get frozen, wake up like 50 years, 100 years later.
Next to Walt Disney.
Next to Walt Disney?
Who is allegedly frozen, yes.
Oh, okay. And there will be a time machine built from the future. And then you jump in there and travel all the way back.
Yes.
To groom her.
Yes.
Wow.
And I don't know where in the timeline this is, but he talks about being her very first and how he will go down. And he would say things like,
make yourself comfortable, get a pillow, and say, baby, I'm going to be here a while. So don't have any anxieties about me quitting, right when you're getting started or before you finish, because I'm going to be here a while.
Boom. I would probably have her sit on the washing machine or something like that because, the vibrations during the spin cycle, anything that would help. And then I would just calm down that beast, her sexual desires. And then she would be happy and I would make her laugh and feel great. She would be happy with me. For some reason, oh man, I saw how amazing it was to, when men go down there on women. Again, I don't know where in the timeline this is. I mean, either way, it's very alarming, disturbing, and jail. But he continues. I even blush from the results from guys doing that to girls. Like, it's overwhelming. Like, man, you can make a girl feel like that? Wow, that's truly bewildering. Keep that as my weapon in my mind. I learned a lot about it, especially from lesbians who, are undoubtedly the best. So 2 things I have as a weapon if I go back into the past are making a girl arrive at the destination. I'm saying it like that. He's saying it much more crass through going down there. And 2, making her laugh. 2 of the reasons why any girl would stay with me. Wow. He says that he needs Björk to see him, like really see him for who he is. He states, Björk has been an incredible part of my mind. It started with a crush and ended up with an obsession, which I'm not embarrassed to admit now. It's an obsession. It sort of calmed down. I mean, times I've been okay with it. It flared up. The flaring up usually comes about by, reading an article. See, I had nothing in my life at that point, really. I was just working. And my life was pretty empty, especially about real feelings, being in love, having an infatuation. It was this euphoric feeling. I had something to look forward to every day. Her music, herself, her being alive was making me happy. I wanted to make her as happy as she made me. What's so startling about this footage, and I watched all 20 hours of it, like at points he says he knows it's crazy, but the way he talks is so casual and is so blunt. It's almost like, this is what it is. He's not like fanatic, like, oh my God. He's just very like, this is what it is. I want her to be as happy as she makes me. Like he's talking about someone he personally knows. The first time Ricardo heard Björk's song was at his brother's house. Her music video was playing on the TV and he glanced over. It was weird. He was like, she is weird. This song was honestly, in his humble opinion, not that great. She has insane vocals, don't get me wrong. He has to give her that. But it's not his style, which is fine. It's just like, the style is kind of what the fork. But as an artist, he could resonate with her style. Just her uniqueness, the fact that she's so creative and is not boxing herself into a genre, that is the message he can get behind. Anyways, he goes home after his brother's house and he remembers, oh yeah, that music video. He gives it another listen, mainly to get inspiration for his own art because he's trying to be an artist. But he can't stop looking at Björk's face. Just the way she did everything. He said it's just this mixture of beauty and strangeness. He said he had never seen a girl quite like her. At first, she kind of looked Chinese? No, more mixed. Just, quote, beautifully strange, exotic, And anyway, I loved her voice. And that was the moment she, quote, entered my mind. And it's almost like she was looking for him too, or she wants him to find out. He states that he would randomly be watching other TV shows that have nothing to do with Björk, and then suddenly she would just appear by chance. And he would be watching this long interview, and all of a sudden Björk would be a guest, and he thought, oh, okay, that's cool, I guess. I get to listen to her talk again. The way he says it gives me the inkling that that is not true. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I get to listen to her speak again, and he just keeps noticing all the special things about her face. But this time it's like her little quirks and mannerisms and her accent. She's got an Icelandic accent and it's very pronounced. He said, I'm completely intrigued. And I myself have many of those similar quirks, like scratching and the crinkling of her nose, picking her pantyhose. I myself as a child had many of those quirks of like fidgeting. And I found that kind of cute, and then I learned she had a son. I didn't know how old she was. She looked so young. I guessed her to be in her early 20s. Very young. She looks almost like a little girl. No wrinkles. Very, very young.
I was quite surprised later when I learned that she was, 28 at that time. I was like, wow, man, no way. It was a little bit of a letdown in a way.
But he couldn't stay away. Everything about her, just the way she talks. In one interview, she said, I insist to be happy, mad, sad, stupid, brilliant, genius, horrible. Happy. I'm going to be it all. I make an effort not to forget all these different colors, to get hilariously drunk and forget to pay my electricity bills and to forget what time it is and miss airplanes and run a band without a fault. He resonates with that. He would read what every single person was saying about her. One comment reads, she uses her voice much more than a vehicle for lyrics and poetry. She communicates textures when she's singing. I saw her live a few years ago and her vocals are no joke. I have been obsessed with watching C-dramas recently, and there is no better way to unwind after a long day than to play a show and really immerse myself in a whole new world while being entertained by the most honestly unhinged plot lines. But the worst part about watching shows in a foreign language is that you miss out on so many jokes and subtitles that subtitles cannot pick up on. So for me, it's so frustrating to feel like I'm missing a whole layer of the plot because my husband is always like, no, let me re-explain this joke because it's a play on words. It means this, it means that. And it's just, that's not in the subtitle. That's why every evening before I watch my C-dramas, I use Rosetta Stone to teach me Chinese. And then when I watch the show, I get to revise all the new words I learned. And I love that Rosetta Stone teaches you words that you can immediately use. It's very applicable. I use Rosetta Stone because it is one of the most trusted language learning programs. It's available on desktop too, but I prefer using the app so I can use it anywhere. It's the only language app that I've been able to stick to using consistently. It doesn't ask you to memorize vocabulary lists or grammar rules because the whole learning process is supposed to be intuitive and it works. With Rosetta, you learn to speak, listen, and think in your target language, and it's designed to feel like you're naturally picking up the language. The material comes in these bite-sized lessons that you can complete in less than 10 minutes, where first you learn the words, then the phrases, and then whole sentences. And my favorite feature is Rosetta's true accent feature that gives you feedback on your pronunciation, which is what I struggle with the most. The app is really convenient to use, and you can even download lessons offline. So if you're learning Italian, for example, you could brush up on your vocabulary while on a flight to Italy. You could also learn French, Korean, Japanese, Arabic, or one of the other 25 languages that Rosetta Stone offers. The best part is, if you sign up now, you can get access to all the languages Rosetta Stone has to offer for the rest of your life for 50% off. Don't put off learning that language. There's no better time than right now to get started. For a very limited time, our listeners can get Rosetta Stone's lifetime membership for 50% off. Visit rosettastone.com/rotten. That's 50% off unlimited access to 25 language courses for the rest of your life. Redeem your 50% off at rosettastone.com/rotten today. He states in his video diaries, like I said, it started with a crush and ended with an obsession. We humans have a natural tendency to worship. Since the beginning of time, civilizations have been worshiping either one thing or the other. The sun, we have that need in us to look up and to worship. Now, for some people, it's different things, but everybody worships something. For a lot of people, it's money. Oh, that's their God. Other people, it's, pleasure. That's their God. People always submit themselves and look up to something. Apparently, in my case, it's her. A human, just like me, an imperfect, fleshly creature, which I put her in this angelic status. I see her like a daughter. A lot of it has to do with her childlike looks and her childlike voice and being so spontaneous and cute. I never really saw her as far as her beauty. I never really saw her as elegant and this and that. She's always been cute and smiling in the way she was like a daughter type of figure. The most I've ever wanted to do with her, I've never had thoughts about her, is just to hold her. I've had many fantasies of just holding her, just her holding me, so it'll be all right. Feeling her lungs, taking the breath of life and expelling it. It's quite a feeling, isn't it? What I just felt right now, I just felt a rush. It's kind of silly, but it makes sense. Technically, God had to fill the earth, bring males and females together. This is different. When you look at the person and you just want to hold them in your arms forever, I love you, just be there together, just me and her and feel that bond. The reason why there's magnetism like that, now for anyone to tell me that that's not love, they're the ones who are out of their minds, because that's plain and simple. Because this is a very instinctual type of thing, because we're animals and stuff like that. The male, the instinct has always been that protective provider type of role. The woman instinctively has more of that caregiver, the preparer of foods, this and that.
When a man sees a woman as a little bit of a childlike, helpless somewhat, he sees her like, submissive, and that's very attractive.
When a woman blushes, it starts in the cheeks. And I always found that subconsciously attractive. Never really thought about it. She's blushing. She looks cute. I never thought of it. But it's flattering, Very childlike, very innocent. And then the flushing moves down the neck. And then after a while onto the chest. And that's a very response, okay? Because again, men like a submissive, helpless little girl looking up to you. Even back during the Victorian ages, women would sometimes have he goes on monologues.
Where?
Yes.
Like, what video is this? Like, number 1?
Oh.
This is the introduction?
Let me tell you, it's all merging together. I think this is like 5 or 6.
Okay, so he goes on, he's just talking about his thoughts.
Yes, nothing is very coherent. So as he's like making bombs, he will go on his thoughts. Sometimes he will literally just vlog. He'll come home after work and then just turn the camera on and share his thoughts before going to bed.
And sometimes you're saying he's working on a bomb?
Yeah.
Is he vlogging the bomb too?
Yes.
And he's talking while he's working on the bomb? Like random thoughts?
Random thoughts.
Wow.
Yeah. Even back during the Victorian ages, women would sometimes have heels, like 6-inch heels or something like that. And they'd be walking on their toes. They always had to have an escort that they, when they walked, because they would fall over. And that helped, because hopelessness is very attractive to males. Instinctual. He continues, I think that's my underlying reason for my attractiveness to her physically. That and her voice too. She has such a childlike voice. When she spoke, very sweet, very subtle. And then when she sang, unbelievable. The degrees of emotion that she sparked in me. And her face, larger eyes, they look more childlike. Higher cheekbones, right? Shorter foreheads, little details like that. Her little button nose that completely drove me nuts. Oh, I love her nose. So cute. She's got such a cute little girl's nose. Also, she's much older than him. This is so weird. He says in the video diaries, I close my eyes and I see her perfectly clear. I know her face more than most people do. Every line, everything, I see her, and it gives me a happy feeling when I forget, what she's saying, and when I forget what I've learned about her. When I look at her, I see a sweet little girl, innocent. That's what I want her to be, because she has many, many very, very crazy aspects of a child. And now she is all he thinks about every waking second of Ricardo's day. Nothing else matters but Björk. It's getting bad. Ricardo actually knows it's getting bad. He would retreat into his little fantasy world where he's having full-blown conversations with her in his mind. Just constant back and forth. And at first he said it was to indulge himself, but now it's become a problem. He says, she had become such an entity in my life. She was so real. Every single thing that Björk put out, he had to buy it. He had to own it, possess it. Even if a magazine just had a small little who wore it best segment on Björk with one picture, he would buy the whole thing. It's like the more he owned of these products, the closer he was to her. He starts keeping up with where she's promoting what song, doing what tour. He was almost keeping tabs on all of her whereabouts. He starts writing a 803-page journal documenting his love for Björk. 803 pages. Everything he learns about her, how it makes him feel, he doesn't want to forget a single thing. Interestingly, his journals would bounce back and forth between his love for Björk. He wrote her name in that journal over 400 times. He mentions a few other celebrities here and there, and it's all interwoven with these monologues of how much he hates himself and he's a big loser. He made at least 150 references to himself being a failure and over 50 references of violence, ranging from violence against himself and straight up murder.
Murdering the Björk?
Yeah. And it's starting to piss him off a little bit that she never writes back to him because he's writing her letters. He's part of her fan club. He says, if she had just written back just once, I would have been happy. But she didn't.
So this is basically the song Stan from Eminem.
That's right? What a lot of people say, about this case. Instead, the worst day of Ricardo's life happens. Ricardo and his buddy Ralph were out to the movies one night and they bought tickets, but they still had some time to kill before the movie started. So they head over to the Barnes and Nobles in the same shopping plaza, which is like a massive bookstore. And they start walking through the magazine aisle. He sees 2 magazines with Björk on the cover. Jackpot. He buys both. If Björk is on the cover, he doesn't even check the price. He grabs it.
Double, same magazine? Twice?
No, 2 different.
Oh, 2 magazines.
He buys both of them, throws it into his little basket. He's so excited, but he has to play it off cool in front of Ralph, make it seem somewhat normal. He just casually flips through it here and there. And then when he gets home, he starts really analyzing it. The first magazine was good. I mean, she just has the most enchanting look. He says, when I first looked at her, wow, she blew my mind completely. I've never seen her look like that before. Those olive green eyes. But by the second one, things are starting to get weird. In an interview, all Ricardo remembers or wants to remember from this is that she talked about having a rough relationship with alcohol. He scrambles in his diary. She's an alcoholic, big time. Which is not very childlike of her.
He did not like that.
Yes.
He's mad? Is he mad about that?
Yes, but nothing compared to this. And she has a lover. So at this point, she already has a son.
Yeah.
But there in the print, in the words, states that she's in a relationship with a music producer named Goldie. He flies into a rage. He starts spiraling in the video diaries, thinking about what the 2 of them have done together intimately. He says, she broke the worst law you can break, in my book. She went out with a black man and f***ed him. Oh. Probably went down on him too. Who knows? She probably even got him in the back. Like, he goes on a rant of how all the black men are taking the white woman. Side note, he's from Uruguay, so he's South American.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess it's like, okay, so it's very interesting. A lot of people have analyzed this, and I don't know if I should be in the one speaking of this, but in the beginning of the video diaries, he's very much white passing. His cadence, I guess, is what you would consider more American. You don't hear much of his accent. Uh-huh. And he has this like fluffy, floofy hair that looks very quintessential, I guess, like white. But then throughout this diaries, he starts shaving his head and he starts letting his accent come out more freely. So it's very interesting. I don't know.
Why did he shave his head?
Oh, he has like a mental break again throughout the video diaries, and he declines physically and mentally. So he just shaves his head twice.
Just a little mental break.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll get into it.
Oh, okay.
So he starts ranting. There's less than 3% of white women in this world, okay? But to let you know some of the facts, to remind myself, 3% of white women in this world that are of childbearing age. 3%, that's it. And now they're dating black men? Well, he doesn't even say black men. He uses like a lot of slurs. He also goes on to state that the best type of place for him to attack, another fantasy of his, is to go, quote, shoot up a place, and the best target, quote, would be a fucking rap concert.
The best target would be a fucking rap concert. Oh my God. Those are the type of people that I would love to exterminate. I'm gonna die fine, but you are gonna take all you motherfuckers with me.
Whoa.
He continues, I mean, like, this is a satanic thing that she just happens to be with a fucking... Like, it's set up for me to do something. I mean, I know she's been with other guys before. You think I like that? No. But what I do many times, I try to think, it's not that big of a deal. It's not a big deal. I mean, it's not a big deal to me, though, because I'm a virgin. I've got tons of footage of it, all different kinds, but I'm a virgin. I've never known a woman. And she's been with a French guy, and they say the French are the best lovers. I mean, I wouldn't know if that's true or not, but I guess she knows. And now she's going to marry this black guy. And I've already told you, that's unacceptable, It's completely unacceptable. He claims that he's not just upset that she's dating someone, but it's the fact that she's dating a black man. He says, for her, a dick is a dick, But I'm a piece of shit. The reason why whites are so afraid of, black people taking their woman is because, like the saying goes, once you try black, you ain't going back. And me having seen many graphic movies, yeah, most black men have very big private parts. That's true. It's very true. Do I find that threatening? I mean, yeah, my dick is about this big, Oh. He holds up his finger to show about 2 inches of length. Maybe 1. And I did see, because he is naked. It does clear. He continues, I've never dreamed of f***ing her. The only thing I've ever fantasized about is maybe just bringing her pleasure to satisfy her needs, just going down on her or something like that. Just giving her pleasure, fulfilling her earthly needs, not f***ing her because I know I'm insufficient for that, okay? I have prostate problems and I got a little dick and I'm fat and I have no stamina. Anyway, just like controlling her needs. That way she doesn't